12 years ago, 8-year-old Emily Forrester rode her pink bicycle outside her home in Cedarbrook Hollow for the last time. What construction workers found buried beneath concrete in a garage would finally answer the question that haunted her mother Laura for over a decade. But what they discovered wasn't just evidence of a crime. It was the beginning of a rescue that would save 3 lives and expose a predator who had been hiding in plain sight for years. Welcome to Shadows by Barry. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a case that will challenge everything you think you know about missing children investigations. I need to warn you up front. This story contains 3 shocking twists, including a 4 a.m. discovery that will leave you speechless. The first twist comes early, the second will make you question everyone's motives, and the third, well, you'll have to stick around for that one. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because cases like this, where persistence pays off in the most unexpected ways, don't come around often. We'll be following Laura Forrester's 12-year search for her daughter, the buried bicycle discovery that reignited hope, and the desperate 4 a.m. chase that exposed a truth no one saw coming. Throughout this video, I'll be asking you questions about the investigation. Drop your theories and comments. I read every single one, and your insights often help piece together details I've missed. This isn't just another missing child case. This is a story about a mother's refusal to give up a predator's carefully constructed lie, and how one sleepless night changed everything. And that, right there, is your first major twist. Emily's bicycle, the last tangible connection to her daughter, had been less than a mile from Laura's daily route for 12 years. Every morning, driving to work, she had unknowingly passed the evidence that would eventually crack her daughter's case wide open. But how does a child's bicycle end up buried under concrete? And why this house? Hold those questions, because what we discover next will change everything you think you know about this case. The property was bustling with activity when Laura and Detective Harlan arrived. Police officers milled around, some taking photos, others talking in small groups. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off the garage area, where several people in white forensic suits were working. As Detective Harlan led Laura toward the garage, a man in a construction vest approached them. "Detective, we finished documenting the initial position of the item." "Thank you, Johnson." "Miss Forrester, this is Ryan Johnson, the renovation foreman who discovered the bicycle." The construction worker nodded at Laura. "We were breaking up the concrete for plumbing repairs and to renovate the entire garage when we found it. It was completely buried underfloor." Laura followed them into the garage where a section of the concrete floor had been broken away, revealing a pit about 3 feet deep. Lying at the bottom, partially covered in dirt and concrete dust, was a small pink bicycle with a white plastic basket attached to the front. Even covered in grime, Laura recognized it immediately. "That's hers," she said, her voice barely audible. "That's Emily's bike." She stepped closer to the edge of the pit, drawn by the sight of something her daughter had touched, had loved. The bike was rusted and deteriorated, but unmistakable. "Are you sure?" Detective Harlan asked gently. Laura nodded and pointed to the handlebars. "Those decorations. See the purple and pink streamers? Emily never let anyone take those off. She loved them." Her voice broke on the last word. "The bike was deliberately placed here," the construction foreman added. "It wasn't just accidentally covered up during construction. It was buried deep, meant to be hidden. Think about this for a moment. Someone took the time and effort to bury a child's bicycle under concrete. This wasn't a panicked disposal. This was planned, methodical, deliberate. Someone wanted to make sure that bicycle was never found. Was there... Laura couldn't finish the question, fear constricting her throat. Detective Harlan understood. "There are no human remains, Laura, just the bicycle." Relief mingled with renewed grief. After 12 years, this was the most tangible connection to her daughter she'd had. But it also meant Emily's fate remained unknown. "Thank you for confirming this for us," Detective Harlan said. "The forensic team will now extract the bicycle and analyze it for fingerprints and any traces of DNA. Though after 12 years underground, I'm not sure what they'll be able to find." As Laura watched the forensic team work, the sound of tires on gravel announced the arrival of another police vehicle. Through the garage's open door, she saw two uniformed officers escorting an older man toward the house. He appeared to be in his late 50s with thinning gray hair and a weathered face. His posture was slightly stooped, and he walked with the careful steps of someone trying to appear smaller than he was. "That's Ernest Mallory, the property caretaker," Detective Harlan said. "Let's go hear what he has to say." Up close, Ernest Mallory looked even more weathered, with deep creases around his mouth and eyes that darted nervously between the detective and Laura. "Mr. Mallory," Detective Harlan began, "I'm Detective Dean Harlan, lead investigator in the Emily Forrester disappearance case. This is Laura Forrester, Emily's mother." Ernest nodded stiffly, not quite meeting either of their eyes. "I heard something was found. The officers wouldn't tell me much. We've discovered a child's bicycle buried under the concrete floor of the garage. It has been identified as belonging to Emily Forrester, who disappeared 12 years ago at the age of 8. Ernest's eyes widened. "A bicycle under the concrete?" His voice rose slightly. "I don't know anything about that. I'm just the caretaker. I deal with guests and property upkeep. That's all." But Laura was watching Ernest's body language carefully. There was something in the way he kept glancing at the garage, a nervousness that seemed excessive even under the circumstances. "How long have you been working as the caretaker for this property?" Detective Harlan asked. "About 10 years now, since Mr. Holloway decided to rent it out through Airbnb." "And who is Mr. Holloway?" "Let me take you to Cedarbrook Hollow, a quiet town in the Pacific Northwest where children disappearing simply wasn't something that happened. This forested community had always prided itself on safety and that small-town spirit where everyone knew everyone. Picture misty mornings when fog rolls through winding, tree-lined roads, creating an almost ethereal landscape. Over the past decade, Cedarbrook Hollow had grown modestly, with new developments sprouting along its edges. The surge of Airbnb rentals brought a steady stream of visitors, as remote work made rural escapes popular for city dwellers seeking refuge in forest tranquility. At the center of our story is 8-year-old Emily Forrester. Golden curls, bright smile, the kind of child who lit up every room she entered. Emily loved exactly two things more than anything else in the world: her pink bicycle and the purple and pink streamers attached to its handlebars. Those streamers were sacred to her. She never let anyone remove them, not even for cleaning. Her mother, Laura, worked as a pastry chef at a local bakery called the Morning Roost. At 28 years old, Laura was devoted to her daughter, but like any working parent, she balanced career and motherhood as best she could. Their routine was simple and predictable. Laura would work the early morning shift, preparing pastries and desserts, finishing by mid-afternoon so she could come home to Emily. What Laura didn't know was that someone had been watching their routine. Someone had been studying Emily's movements, her schedule, her habits. Someone had been waiting for the perfect moment. Remember that detail about Emily's bicycle streamers. They never came off, no matter what. Hold on to that, because it becomes crucial when we get to discovery 12 years later. Summer break. Every parent knows what that means. Children home from school, playing outside, filling the house with laughter and chaos. For Emily, summer meant one thing: more time on her beloved pink bicycle. That particular day started like any other. Laura was in the kitchen, preparing lunch. She could hear Emily outside, the familiar sound of bicycle wheels on pavement, the gentle laughter of a child at play. It was the soundtrack of normal family life. But then, silence. Laura called out for Emily. No response. She checked the backyard. Empty. The front yard. Nothing. That's when the panic began to set in. You know that feeling when something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is? That primal parental instinct that screams danger even when everything looks normal? Laura ran to the neighbors' houses. Had anyone seen Emily? When was the last sighting? The questions tumbled out as fear gripped her throat. By nightfall, the entire town was searching. 500 volunteers, 9 units, helicopters cutting through the darkening sky. Cedarbrook Hollow had never seen anything like it. This was supposed to be the safe place, the town where children could play outside without fear. But Emily Forrester had vanished without a trace. The aftermath was devastating in ways that extended far beyond Emily's disappearance. Laura's husband couldn't bear the weight of their shared grief. He blamed Laura for not watching Emily closely enough, for being in the kitchen instead of outside with their daughter. 6 months after Emily vanished, he filed for divorce and moved to Seattle, leaving Laura alone with her guilt and a house full of memories. Now here's something I want you to think about as we continue. How does a child simply disappear from her own front yard in broad daylight, in a small town where everyone knows everyone? Keep that question in mind. The answer is more disturbing than you might imagine. Fast forward 12 years. Laura Forrester is now 40 years old. Her honey blonde hair shows strands of silver that she no longer bothers to hide. The lines around her eyes have deepened, etched there by a grief no parent should ever have to bear. She still works at the Morning Roost, still starts her day at 5:30 a.m. preparing pastries, still finishes by mid-afternoon. But now she comes home to an empty house that never stops feeling too quiet. Laura had converted Emily's bedroom into a home office years earlier. She couldn't bear to pass that door every day and see her daughter's things untouched, waiting for a return that never came. The walls were now neutral beige instead of the bright yellow Emily had chosen, but Laura kept a few of her daughter's drawings framed on the wall, unwilling to erase her completely. That afternoon in late May, Laura pulled into her driveway at exactly 3:17 p.m., just as she did most weekdays. She gathered her pastry utensil box and uniform, switched off the engine of her aging car, and was about to head upstairs for a shower when her phone rang. The screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in years, Detective Dean Harland. Dean had been the lead investigator on Emily's case. In the early days, he'd called Laura daily with updates. But as months turned to years and the case went cold, the calls stopped. Laura often had to reach out to the police department herself, only to be told there were no new leads. Her heart raced as she answered. Detective Harland. Miss Forrester, good afternoon. His voice was deeper than she remembered, perhaps aged by the years since they'd last spoken. Are you at home? Yes, I just got back from work. Is everything okay? There was a brief pause that seemed to stretch forever. Something's come up related to Emily's case. It's important. Would it be all right if I came by to speak with you in person? Laura's hand tightened around the phone. After 12 years of silence, Detective Harland was asking to meet in person. This was either very good news or very bad news. Of course. Please come. I'll be there in 15 minutes. After hanging up, Laura paced around her living room, straightening magazines that didn't need straightening, fluffing pillows that weren't flat. Her mind raced with possibilities. Had they found Emily? Was it her remains? Had someone confessed? The uncertainty was agonizing. When she saw the patrol car pull up outside through her front window, Laura was already waiting at the door. Detective Harlan stepped out, looking older than she remembered. His dark hair was now peppered with gray, and he carried himself with the slight stoop of someone who has spent too many years hunched over case files. Please come in, Laura said, but he remained at the bottom of the porch steps. Actually, I think it's better if you come with me. We found something, an important piece of evidence related to Emily's case. Laura's breath caught in her throat. What is it? We found Emily's bicycle. The forensic team is investigating the location now. Her bike, after 12 years. Where? How? It was discovered at an Airbnb property not far from here. It would be best if you came with me so you could identify it and confirm that it belongs to Emily. Laura didn't hesitate. She grabbed her purse and locked the door behind her. As they drove the familiar streets of Cedarbrook Hollow, Laura realized they were heading down Oak Ridge Road, a route she took daily on her way to work. When they pulled into the driveway of a large cedar-sided house, Laura felt a chill run through her. I pass this house every day, she whispered. I drive by here every single morning. Ernest shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Vance Holloway. He's the owner. Lives in Zurich, Switzerland now. Have for years. He comes back once or twice a year to check on the property, but otherwise he trusts me to manage everything. When was the garage floor last renovated or repaired? Not since I've been here, Ernest replied quickly. The house was built about 13 years ago. Mr. Holloway lived here for a few years before moving to Europe. Detective Harlan's voice took on a harder edge. Mr. Mallory, I'll be direct with you. The main suspects in this case at this point are people who have had regular access to this property. That's you and the owner. Ernest's face flushed red. You think I had something to do with this? I wouldn't hurt a child. I'm a property caretaker, not a criminal. Here's what struck me about Ernest's responses. He was defensive, yes, but more than that, he was trying to flex suspicion before anyone had directly accused him of anything. Why would an innocent man immediately jump to trafficking theories and construction timelines, unless he was trying to create reasonable doubt? We'll need records of all guests who have stayed here over the years, one of the uniformed officers said. Ernest nodded quickly. Of course, I can provide all of that. This property is one of the favorites in the area. Some guests have stayed for months, even a year or two, especially since remote work became common. After further questioning, Detective Harlan directed his officers to coordinate with international law enforcement to contact Vance Holloway in Switzerland. The property would be thoroughly searched, and all guests would be contacted and interviewed. But as Laura was escorted home, she couldn't shake the feeling that Ernest Mallory knew more than he was saying. The way his eyes had darted around, the excessive nervousness, the immediate defensiveness. Something wasn't right. That evening, Laura sat in her home office, trying to process the day's events. Her mind was spinning. The discovery of Emily's bicycle, the questioning of Ernest Mallory, the renewed investigation. For the first time in 12 years, she felt something other than the dull ache of loss, a spark of hope. Laura logged into the online forum she had frequented for over a decade, Missing Children Support Community. The group had become a lifeline, connecting her with other parents who understood her pain. Her hands trembled as she created a new post. Today, after 12 years, police found Emily's bicycle buried under concrete in the garage of an Airbnb rental property in town. I drive past this house every day on my way to work. The investigation is ongoing. I'm feeling overwhelmed with emotion, but wanted to update all of you who have supported me for so long. This could be the break we've been waiting for. She attached one of the photos she had taken of the bicycle in the pit and hit post. Almost immediately, notifications began popping up as members of the community responded with messages of support and hope. But then a notification appeared for her private messages. What she saw made her gasp in shock and horror. The message contained a photo, one she recognized as a picture she had shared on a forum years ago of Emily riding her pink bicycle in front of their house. But this version had been grotesquely altered. Emily's smiling face had been replaced with what appeared to be a dead pig's head, crudely photoshopped onto her daughter's body. "Oh my God," Laura whispered, her hand covering her mouth. Below the disturbing image was a short video clip. With trembling fingers, Laura hit play, immediately regretting her decision. The video showed someone chopping what appeared to be a pig's head, then wrapping it in plastic wrap. The footage was grainy and poorly lit, but clear enough to be deeply disturbing. Accompanying the media was a message. "Your daughter's as dead as this pig. Just accept it and live with it." Laura felt bile rise in her throat. She slammed her laptop closed and rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before she vomited. She retched until there was nothing left, then slumped against a cool tile wall, shaking. After several minutes, she gathered her strength and returned to the computer. She needed to document this before reporting it to Detective Harlan. Steeling herself, she reopened the laptop and took screenshots of the message, the altered photo, and the video. Then she typed a reply. "Who are you? If you're brave enough to send this filth, you should be brave enough to reveal yourself." She clicked on the sender's username, hoping to find information about who might have sent such a horrible message. But the profile was private with no followers or following counts visible, suggesting the account had been created solely for the purpose of tormenting her. Laura called Detective Harlan immediately. "I just saw what you sent me," he said without preamble. "When did you receive this?" "Just now. I posted an update about finding Emily's bike on my support forum, and this appeared in my private messages almost immediately. I've got our tech team analyzing the video and trying to trace the account. One thing I noticed right away, the trees in the background of the video look like European alpine evergreens, not the species we typically see around here." Laura felt her heart sink. "Do you think it could be the property owner? He lives in Switzerland, right?" It's a possibility we can't rule out. The timing is suspicious. But it could also be someone completely unrelated, a troll who saw the news and decided to be cruel. But here's what bothered me about this message. The timing was too perfect. Within minutes of Laura posting about the bicycle discovery, someone had sent her a personalized, manipulated image and video that suggests someone was monitoring her online activity closely, waiting for exactly this moment to strike. And that phrase, just accept it and live with it, remember those words. They become crucial later in our story. The question is, who was watching Laura's every move online? Who wanted her to stop searching for Emily? And why now, after 12 years, did they feel the need to try and crush her renewed hope? The answer to that question was closer than anyone imagined. That night, sleep eluded Laura completely. Her mind raced with scenarios and possibilities. The bike buried in concrete, the disturbing altered photo, Ernest Mallory's nervous demeanor, the property owner in Switzerland, the timing of that horrific message. Laura watched the digital numbers on her bedside clock change. 1:17 a.m., 2:42 a.m., 3:28 a.m. By 4 a.m., she had given up entirely. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself. If I can't sleep, at least I can be productive. Laura got out of bed and changed into black jeans and a soft green sweater. She gathered her pastry utensil box, her chef's uniform, and her purse. It wasn't unusual for her to arrive at the Morning Roost early. Marge, the bakery owner, had given Laura her own key years ago, trusting her completely with the business. But 4 a.m. was extreme, even by her standards. The bakery had become Laura's sanctuary in the years after Emily's disappearance. There was something therapeutic about the precise measurements, the physical work of kneading dough, the transformative magic of heat-turning simple ingredients into something beautiful. She loaded her supplies into her car and backed out of the driveway. The streets of Cedarbrook Hollow were deserted at this hour, the only illumination coming from occasional streetlights and the faint glow of dawn beginning to lighten the eastern sky. What happened next would change everything. Laura drove slowly through the empty streets, her mind still processing the previous day's events. As she followed the winding road that led toward downtown, she automatically slowed as she approached the curve near the Airbnb house where Emily's bicycle had been found. Something caught her attention as she neared the property, a light visible through the trees, coming from one of the house's windows. Laura frowned. Detective Harlan had told her the property was under police investigation, and no one should be there. As she watched, the light suddenly went out, plunging the house back into darkness. "That's odd," Laura murmured to herself. Why would someone be turning lights on and off at 4 a.m. in a house that's supposed to be empty? Acting on instinct, Laura slowed her car and turned onto the private road that led to the house. She drove cautiously, keeping her headlights on but approaching with care. As she drew nearer, she spotted a white van parked near the side of the house. It wasn't a police vehicle. Laura parked her car a short distance away and switched off the engine. She debated whether to call Detective Harlan immediately, but decided to get a closer look first. If it was nothing, she didn't want to wake him for no reason. She stepped out of her car quietly, closing the door with a gentle push rather than a slam. The pre-dawn air was cool and damp against her skin as she moved toward the house, staying close to the tree line for cover. As she approached, Laura saw movement near the front of property. A figure was walking hurriedly from the house toward the white van. Ernest Mallory. Even in the dim light, she recognized a stooped posture and nervous gait. Ernest was carrying something, though Laura couldn't make out what it was from her distance. He placed the item in the van and turned back toward the house. Then he froze as he heard the sound of Laura's footsteps on the gravel driveway. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice tight with alarm. Laura hesitated, then stepped into view. There was no point in hiding now. It's Laura Forrester, Emily's mother. Ernest's face was difficult to read in the darkness, but his body language spoke volumes. His shoulders tensed, and he took a half-step back toward his van. "What are you doing here at this hour?" he asked, his voice strained. "I could ask you the same thing," Laura replied. "I thought this property was off-limits during the investigation." Ernest shifted his weight nervously. "Mr. Holloway asked me to retrieve some important documents from the house. insurance papers and property records that the police need for their investigation. He got permission for me to collect them. Laura studied him, noticing how his eyes darted around, never settling on her face for more than a second. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Holloway is in Switzerland. It's already mid-morning there, Ernest said quickly. He called when he woke up and heard about what was happening. The police needed these papers right away. The explanation sounded plausible, but something about Ernest's manner made Laura uneasy. He seemed too nervous, too eager to justify his presence. I need to deliver these papers to the police station now, Ernest continued, moving toward the driver's side of his van. You shouldn't linger around here, Miss Forrester. This is a crime scene. Ernest climbed into his van and started the engine. Laura walked back to her car, listening as the van pulled away. Once inside, she immediately reached for her phone and called Detective Harland. Despite the early hour, he answered on the third ring, his voice alert. Laura, is everything all right? She quickly explained what she had witnessed. He said he had permission to enter the house? Detective Harland asked, his tone sharpening. Yes, to collect documents for the owner. That's absolutely false, Detective Harland said firmly. No one has permission to enter that property right now, especially not in the middle of the night. Whatever Ernest was doing there, it wasn't authorized by us. Laura felt a chill run through her. Should I follow him? He just left a few minutes ago. Absolutely not, Detective Harland replied immediately. He could be dangerous, especially if he feels cornered. Stay where you are. I'm sending officers to your location now, and I'll dispatch others to look for Ernest's van. Which direction did he go? West on Cedar Ridge Road. But Laura had made a decision that would change everything. She had promised Detective Harland she wouldn't follow Ernest, but something inside her, the mother who had spent 12 years searching for answers, couldn't simply drive away. Not when the truth might be so close. She put her car in drive and turned west onto Cedar Ridge Road, following the path Ernest's van had taken. Laura continued driving west on Cedar Ridge Road, keeping a careful eye out for Ernest's white van. The road wound through a dense section of forest with few houses and even fewer streetlights. After driving for about 10 minutes, she began to worry that she had somehow missed him. But just as she was considering turning around, she spotted a white van parked on the shoulder ahead, partially hidden by trees. Laura immediately slowed down and pulled over herself, stopping much farther back and turning off her headlights. From this distance, she could just make out the outline of the van in the growing dawn light. As her window rolled down, a faint smell reached her. Smoke, acrid and chemical, not the pleasant aroma of a campfire. Laura peered through the trees and saw thin wisps of black smoke rising from the forest not far from where Ernest had parked. He was burning something. She watched as Ernest emerged from the trees, carrying what appeared to be a metal burn barrel. Even from this distance, Laura could see his movements were hurried and anxious. He kept glancing around, clearly worried about being seen. Ernest loaded the barrel into the back of his van, then got into the driver's seat and continued west. Laura followed at a safe distance, her heart pounding. When Ernest turned onto a narrow side road, Laura drove past, then pulled over when she was out of sight, checking her GPS. She saw that the side road led to Whispering Pines Lane, a cul-de-sac with only a handful of homes. This must be where Ernest lived. Laura waited, then slowly drove back to the turn. She took it carefully, keeping her headlights dim. After about a quarter mile, the trees thinned out, revealing a small clearing with several houses set well back from the road. Laura parked at the edge of the forest and used her phone's camera to zoom in. Ernest's van was parked in front of a modest single-story home with weathered blue siding. She watched as Ernest unloaded the burned barrel and carried it to the side of his house. When he returned to his van, Laura was surprised to see him wheeling what appeared to be a red trolley, the kind used to transport heavy items through industrial facilities. Ernest loaded something heavy from the trolley into the van, his movements labored and awkward. He made 3 trips, each time struggling with the weight of whatever he was transferring. Laura quickly snapped photos with her phone, then called Detective Harland again. Ernest is loading something from his house into his van using a trolley, she reported. He's made 3 trips and appears to be moving something very heavy. Where exactly are you now? Whispering Pines Lane, parked at the edge of the trees. I'm a good distance from his house. Our officers are still several minutes out. Can you see which direction he's heading? He's getting in his van now. There's only one road out of this cul-de-sac. Laura watched as Ernest started his van and began to drive slowly down the lane. She ducked down as the van approached, not wanting to be seen. He's heading back toward Cedar Ridge Road, she whispered into the phone. As soon as Ernest had passed, Laura saw multiple police cruisers with lights flashing racing toward the cul-de-sac. They had been driving without sirens to avoid alerting Ernest to their approach. The first cruiser slowed as it neared the intersection, and Laura saw Detective Harlan inside, speaking urgently into his radio. The other police cars continued past, presumably in pursuit of Ernest's van. Laura started her car and followed the police vehicles at a distance. As she rounded a bend, she saw that officers had formed a roadblock across the road, stopping Ernest's van from proceeding. The police had positioned their vehicles strategically, leaving Ernest no path forward or backward. Laura parked her car a safe distance away and watched as officers approached Ernest's van with weapons drawn, ordering him to exit the vehicle with his hands visible. Ernest complied, stepping out slowly, his face a mask of resignation. Detective Harlan approached once Ernest had been secured and handcuffed. 2 officers stayed with the suspect, while others moved toward the rear of the van. With gloved hands, they opened the back doors. Laura couldn't see what was inside from her position, but she saw the officers' reactions. Shock, followed by urgent activity. Detective Harlan spoke rapidly into his radio, and within minutes, an ambulance arrived on the scene. Unable to contain her curiosity any longer, Laura got out her car and walked toward the scene. A uniformed officer moved to intercept her, but Detective Harlan saw her and waved her through. What did you find? Laura asked. Detective Harlan's expression was grim. You should prepare yourself. Laura, this is difficult. He led her to the back of the van, where officers were carefully removing what appeared to be black body bags. There were 3 of them, each containing a human form. They're alive, Detective Harlan said quickly, seeing the horror on Laura's face. All 3 of them. They appear to be heavily sedated, but they're breathing. Laura stared at the body bags, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Is one of them Emily? Before Detective Harlan could answer, one of the medical technicians carefully unzipped the first bag, revealing the pale face of a young woman with blonde hair. Though the features were those of an adult, not the 8-year-old child Laura remembered, there was no mistaking her daughter's face. Emily! Laura breathed, her legs nearly giving way beneath her. Across the road, Ernest stood in handcuffs between 2 officers. When he saw Laura looking at him, his face contorted with rage. You should have accepted it, he shouted at her. She was dead to you, and she should have stayed that way if you hadn't interfered. Laura recognized those words immediately. They were almost identical to the message she had received online. Just accept it and live with it. It was him. Ernest Mallory had sent her that horrible message and video. How could you? Laura demanded, taking a step toward him. She was just a child. Ernest spat on the ground, his eyes blazing with twisted hatred. You should have just lived with it, he snarled. That's enough, Detective Harlan interrupted, nodding to the officers to take Ernest away. As the medical team carefully transferred the 3 victims to stretchers and loaded them into waiting ambulances, Detective Harlan explained what they had discovered. We believe the other 2 women are Kayla Bennett and Juliana Ramirez, both reported missing years ago as children from other cities. Ernest kept detailed records of all 3 women. It appears he maintained some twisted fantasy of being their caretaker rather than their captor. Laura watched in stunned silence as Emily was loaded into the ambulance. After 12 years of searching, of hoping against hope, her daughter was alive. Changed, grown, traumatized beyond imagining, but alive. Would you like to ride in the ambulance with Emily? Detective Harlan asked. Laura nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in her throat. As she climbed into the ambulance beside Emily's stretcher, Laura gently took her daughter's hand. It was larger than she remembered, the fingers longer, the nails neatly trimmed. This was not the hand of the 8-year-old who had ridden away on her pink bicycle, but the hand of a young woman who had endured unimaginable horrors. "I'm here, Emily," Laura whispered, squeezing gently. "I never stopped looking for you. I never gave up." The ambulance raced through the morning streets of Cedarbrook Hollow. Laura sat beside Emily's stretcher, holding her daughter's hand and studying her face, a face that had matured from the round-cheeked child in her memories to a young woman of 20. At Cedarbrook Memorial Hospital, Emily was quickly transferred to a private room with a police officer stationed outside. Dr. Patel, the attending physician, assured Laura that Emily's vital signs were stable, though they wouldn't know the full extent of her condition until the drugs wore off. Around 8 a.m., Laura noticed Emily's eyelids beginning to flutter. "Emily?" Laura leaned closer. "Can you hear me?" Emily's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually clearing as she took in her surroundings. When her gaze fell on Laura, there was a moment of confusion followed by a flicker of recognition. "Mom!" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Laura's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sweetheart, it's me." Emily's eyes widened as full awareness returned. "Where am I? Where's Ernest?" Fear edged into her voice. "You're in the hospital," Laura assured her quickly. "Ernest has been arrested. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe now." Emily stared at Laura as if trying to convince herself that what she was seeing was real. I thought I'd never see you again. I never stopped looking for you. Never stopped hoping." When Emily felt strong enough, Detective Harlan gently questioned her about her captivity. What she revealed painted a horrifying picture of 12 years of psychological manipulation. "I was riding my bike around our house," Emily began, her gaze growing distant. "It was summer vacation, and Mom was inside making lunch. Ernest drove by in his truck. He stopped and offered me a candy bar, then asked if I wanted to see his cat that had just had kittens." Laura closed her eyes briefly, imagining the scene, her bright, trusting daughter being lured by such a common predator tactic. "I said no at first," Emily continued, "but he said the kittens were in a garage nearby and I could bring my bike. I really wanted to see the kittens." Her voice broke. "There weren't any kittens. When we got to the empty house, I guess it was the Airbnb place before it was finished, he gave me a drink. It tasted funny, but I was thirsty from riding my bike. Then I got really sleepy." Emily explained how Ernest had taken her to an underground bunker beneath his house, where she met Kayla. Juliana came later. Ernest told them there was a war outside, that their parents were dead, and he was protecting them. "But we figured out he was lying," Emily said, her voice hardening. "We saw in newspapers sometimes when he was careless. We knew there was no war." Detective Harlan's investigation revealed the full scope of Ernest's crimes. His journals showed he believed he was rescuing girls from what he perceived as neglectful families. The house had a storm bunker underneath, converted into a soundproof living area where he kept them hidden. Most chilling of all, Ernest's recent entries showed he was planning to move all 3 women to a new location. He had connections to an international trafficking ring, and as the women neared adulthood, he was preparing to sell them. "If you hadn't spotted him at the Airbnb property that night, Laura, and followed him," Detective Harlan said grimly, "he would have transported them this week. They might have disappeared forever." Ernest Mallory was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, psychological abuse, and conspiracy to commit human trafficking. The evidence against him was overwhelming. His journals, computer records, the underground bunker, and the testimony of his 3 victims. The other families, Kayla Bennett's parents in Portland and Juliana, Ramirez's family in Seattle, received phone calls that would change their lives forever. After years of grief and uncertainty, their daughters were coming home. Emily's recovery would be long and difficult. 12 years of captivity had left psychological scars that would take time to heal. But she was surrounded by love, her mother who never gave up, medical professionals who specialized in trauma recovery, and 2 other survivors who understood exactly what she had endured. "What gives me strength," Emily told her mother during one of their many conversations, "is knowing that you never stopped believing I was alive. Even when everyone else had to accept that I was gone, you kept searching." Laura squeezed her daughter's hand. A mother's love doesn't have an expiration date. I would have searched for you for the rest of my life. During the investigation, police discovered that Ernest had been monitoring Laura's online activity for years through the Missing Children Support Community Forum. He knew about her daily routine, her route to work, her emotional state. The timing of his evidence destruction wasn't coincidental. He had been waiting for exactly this moment, when Emily's bicycle was discovered. He was terrified that finding the bike would lead to finding the girls, Detective Harlan explained. That's why he sent you that horrible message. He was trying to break your spirit, make you give up the search just when you were closest to the truth. But Ernest had underestimated a mother's determination. Laura's refusal to accept his psychological warfare, combined with her inability to sleep that crucial night, had saved 3 lives. Today, Emily Forrester is rebuilding her life with the support of her mother and a team of specialists who understand trauma recovery. She's working with prosecutors to ensure Ernest Mallory never has the opportunity to hurt another child. Kayla Bennett and Juliana Ramirez are also on their healing journeys, supported by families who never stopped hoping for their return. Laura still works at the Morning Roost, still starts her day at 5:30 a.m. But now she comes home to a house that's no longer too quiet. Emily is there, learning to navigate a world that continued without her for 12 years, but doing it with the strength of someone who survived the unimaginable. The pink bicycle with purple and pink streamers sits in Laura's garage now. Evidence returned after the trial. Emily doesn't ride it anymore, but she's grateful it was found. That bike brought me home, she says. It was the breadcrumb trail that led you to me. Ernest Mallory was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will never again have the opportunity to target innocent children or terrorize grieving families. This case reminds us that predators often hide in plain sight, presenting themselves as helpful community members while committing horrific crimes. But it also shows us the power of a mother's love, the importance of never giving up hope, and how sometimes the smallest decisions, like driving to work early on a sleepless night, can change everything. What strikes me most about this case is that it wasn't advanced forensic science or sophisticated police work that ultimately saved Emily, Kayla, and Juliana. It was Laura's maternal instinct, her refusal to accept that her daughter was gone, and her willingness to trust that instinct even when it led her into danger. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. Never underestimate the power of persistence, the importance of trusting your instincts, and the strength that comes from refusing to give up on the people you love. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Shadows by Barry. If this case moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dive investigations. Drop a comment below. What part of Laura's story impacted you the most? And remember, there are still missing children out there whose families need our support and awareness. Next week, we'll be covering another case that proves truth really is stranger than fiction. Until then, stay safe, trust your instincts, and never stop hoping. This is Shadows by Barry, and I'll see you in the next one.